All right. Hey, gang. Can you guys hear me? Got it. Got it. Perfect. So we have 6 people on here. This will work better if unless you have background noise, it'll probably work better if we have your mics off. If nobody's going to collaborate, this will be really fast. So we'll wait for some other people to jump on. It looks like quite a few people are trying to jump on now as we speak. So who do we have on here right now? We have Courtney, Jen, Cecily, Stephanie. Is that Mike? I'm not sure which mic it is. Which mic are we at here? Let me see. It just says Mike.
Mike Johnson.
Oh, yo, Mike. Okay.
Hey.
Well, now that you're here, we don't have to worry about any active speaker. I can turn it over to you. You can tell us all the insight that you're seeing out there. Makes my job really easy. Oh, come on, you just went off. That's not right. That's not right. Let's see if some more people pop on before we get started.
Hey everyone, it's Karen Eve. Just joined you.
Hey,
hi
Karen.
John.
Good. How you doing?
Fantastic. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thanks for having this.
Yeah, I the whole idea with this is to get people's input. Hey, Capri.
Oh.
I was just saying, Capri, we're introing everybody on here. Mike Johnson, Stephanie, Cecily, Courtney, Jen, and Karen Niv. Trying to just bring people together to kind of get an idea of what they're seeing out there, because we do believe there is a market shift occurring. And it's always best to try to predict it versus get caught on the tail end when the news starts to report it. But we'll dive off in different geographic areas to start, since we have a lot of PA people on here right now. What I'll do, I'm not sure that people have done any of their own metrics, but first we'll do a quick review of what we're seeing from some of the MLS reports, and then we'll talk about what everybody's seeing in their everyday real estate lives. So 1 second here, I'm going to share my screen real quick. All right. So you guys, everybody sees my screen, right? Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Anyone? Oh, good. Okay. So basically, I'm looking at some fast stats, which I think is a little bit easier when you're comparing a bunch of areas at one time. So I can use side by side. I'm not sure if any of you use this, but if you go to the Bright dashboard and you click on market, okay, you can look at industry watch. That's where I'm taking this one from. So a couple areas I like to look at this to evaluate what the market demands are as I go to home demand index. That's the one I showed before at one of our meetings. And then I go to the industry watch. And from the industry watch, it's pulling up a lot of data. A lot of this data is got, in all full disclosure, is coming from showing time. And as we know, Zillow purchased showing time, so we have everybody's opinion on those things. But one thing Zillow is very good at is they're good at data compilation and providing forecasts, not necessarily estimates, but from a computer model and algorithms, as far as they go, Zillow is very good at their estimates. Okay, you obviously need a person to come up and dissect it in a more, I guess, in more details, but it's a good overview. So that being said, I pulled up Bucks County. So we have a Philadelphia watch. We have Burlington County, Camden County, Bucks County. I'm not sure if anybody wants, let me throw Montgomery County in there for Mike. Sorry, Mike, forgot about you. There we go. So I'm gonna pop up a Montgomery County one as well. So one of the things I'm gonna look at first, if you see the market activity, and if I'm going too fast or you don't understand, if my connection is choppy, let me know. So one thing I find cautious is comparing where we are now to last year. Everybody's looking at these crazy numbers, but remember last year we had COVID. So I think that 1 year change is a little bit of a, I would say it's like misdirection, because depending where you resided and where your market was, COVID was shut down in certain geographic areas while others continued to kind of flourish and a lot of activity occurred. So you have to kind of think of where your market was when you're comparing from this year to last year. And I will say that's kind of why I don't think Philadelphia is doing as good as, and I'm going to get everybody's opinion, but I think the Philadelphia market, excluding Northeast, when you look at Philadelphia, if you take Chestnut Hill, kind of Oak Lane and Northeast out of the equation, I think Philadelphia is actually doing pretty bad. If somebody was to take those, just the center city area and its immediate surroundings, I think these numbers would actually look a little bit on the down. But obviously we have a plus 11% median sale price, average sale price 14%. But look over here at the market activity on the right-hand corner, and you're going to look at like the home sales and then closed sales. Okay, so we're up 0.4% from last year in quarter three. It looks like quarter three of 2020, we were right around that same mark. So again, we're looking at COVID, where there was not a lot of activity, and compare it to now, I don't think that's a huge jump. Now let's go to my next one, which is Burlington County. And this makes a little more sense because in Burlington County, it was not shut down the way Philadelphia was. So you had a lot of sales in quarter three of 2020, but look at quarter three of 2021, it's at minus 7%. So to me, we're on a decline. We're getting to a declining market. You can also go through and look at each individual zip code on this report, which I like. And what I'm seeing on closed sales is quite a bit of in the minus. Now that could be inventory issues as well. So we want to look at inventory, of course. But let's go to some other areas as well. Actually, let me move back to Philadelphia because this is what I find interesting. If you go down to 19146, okay, and you're looking, their closed sales over the last year are at minus 12.6%, which I find pretty interesting. I also like to look at the percentage of original price received and then the marketing time. And, you have in here 19147 is 49 days, 39 days for 46. But you're looking at 96. So we're roughly anywhere in some of these zip codes, we're going 4 to 5% off of the asking price, which means, and then you look at other zip codes, look at the Northeast, 19114, 19115, 19116, you're at 101%. So you can kind of see where I say that the market, there's been shifts in the market. I think Center City and its surroundings continues to struggle. We'll talk a little bit about that, everybody's opinions on that as well. Burlington County, you want to look at Morristown's pretty level. Any other zip codes anybody finds of particular interest in here, but you have some significant changes. However, look at the look at the percentage of original price received on most of the Burlington County areas. I mean, you don't find many zip codes below 98% or even 100%. See this column right here in quarter three, which I find that's pretty remarkable. So these are good reports also to show your to review with your clients on your scheduled 2 showings today, 2 days ago in Morristown, that were in the $600,000 to $700,000 price range, and in a matter of from the time we scheduled it, already both are under contract, and you can see it right here. I mean, it's crazy. So that's Burlington County. So let's go to Camden County, which is a much larger county. Again, price appreciation, 103, 106. I mean, you're barely having anything below 98% from the original list price. So then and then you want to look here, and you're seeing now a slight decline on closed units from this time last year. in those counties. Bucks County, first I like to look at the sale price. It's very similar to New Jersey. So what are we seeing here? What does all this mean? We're seeing that there's less units closing. We're seeing that price point is a big issue with affordability. And we're seeing that certain geographic areas like downtown Philly are not rebounding the way that we thought they would from COVID. I mean, we're like pretty much we're over a year from the initial happenings of COVID, and you're still seeing struggles in the city with inventory issues. So you're having, it's not like we're nationally in a buyer's market. It's completely a seller's market nationally, which makes me have a little bit of more concerns for Center City and the surrounding zip codes in an urban area than I previously would in the past, because usually Center City was a pretty insulated area from market shifts. And now you want to take a look at, this is Montco. Montco's a little bit off of some of the others, but pretty strong still, like all 97, 100%, 102%. You'll see a couple other zip codes that are hitting there. And then it's pretty much on target with what the other surrounding suburbs are. So that's just a quick review of what we're seeing data-wise. The reason here's the problem. Hindsight's 2020, and we're trying to kind of figure out where the market's going. And that's where I'm going to open this up for everybody to kind of give their discussions and what they're seeing. I think we would definitely have to have another one of these probably in the early part of next year with better data. But from right now, I see a market shift occurring. I think we're going to have struggling prices a little bit, not so much in the suburbs. I think we're going to have struggles in the city that I'm seeing, particularly myself. And I think at some point we've kind of plateaued to an extent on pricing, because I think there's multiple offers in these suburban communities, but less. Northeast Philly, as long as rates stay strong and stay low and the economy is somewhat strong, I think Northeast Philly is going to continue to go up. What do you guys think? Opening it up.
Well, here in Philly, we don't do a lot in Center City, but we do have a listing right now. I feel like when I do spot checks, I feel like it's definitely still a seller's market, but closer towards the middle. I feel like a lot of times the decline in prices isn't actually a decline in price on the average. It's that the sellers still think that they can ask for more than what the last one sold for. So we had that, and then certain areas do have a ton of inventory, like 1914, like the Point Breeze has a ton of inventory. So if anybody has an investor, like the rentals are still strong there, but there's a ton of inventory there. So I think, but Fishtown still, if it's halfway decent, still sells like hotcakes. Yeah. So every area is just slightly different. I know West Philly's changing because now Penn Alexander is a lottery. So West Philly used to be really popular. Now it's kind of gone down a little bit.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'm seeing the same, Capri. I have a listing in West Philly that's overpriced, self-admitted, drastically overpriced, by the way. We're ending our listing term with this particular person. I think it's a lot of what you said is, in the city, you used to always be able to, I used to joke and say, agents just put a dartboard up, put a blindfold on and throw the dart, see where the pricing dart goes. Because you never know, you get that person that really wants to live in a city and they're just, I got to be there. I think now you have to check all of the boxes and be in such a great location. And the one thing I'm seeing in the city that matters more than ever is safety. I think that we have a couple of clients that we're working with right now. They're all leaving because of the politics, safety, everything that's happened over the last 2 years. And the irony is they are pricing and saying, this is so desirable, people need to come in. And I'm like, well, wait a second. You just said you're leaving because you think it's terrible, but imagine if you're marketing that out to people. So I think you're 100% on. You have to dive into the actual neighborhood. I agree, Fishtown's still pretty strong, still strong. But yeah, Grad Hospital, I've seen, unless it's a property with parking, roof deck, all the bells and whistles, you can't price high. I have one in there, and if you price high, it's going to sit. That's what I think. So it's like kind of like, now, what's the concern, Capri? Like, do you think, as you said, Point Breeze? So let's talk about that. Point Breeze is kind of a mess with all these units, and Grace Ferry, and how everybody started going out to Grace Ferry because Point Breeze was getting priced out, and all these like outlier areas. I know Chris Rossmeyer is not on this. He has an investor who built new construction. The guy ran out of money going through all these things. So it's like, and now he's like, Chris is like, there's no way we're going to sell this for the price we need to get. Because I do think, like, what do you think you can go in on a property that's not selling in 30 days on the market in this city? What percentage under asking would you think is not unreasonable to just throw numbers at, Capri?
I mean, a minimum of 3%. I would do, maybe try.
If you're a buyer's agent.
If I was a buyer, maybe like 3% assist and 3% off the sales price.
So like a 5 to 6%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think even lower, and see kind of like what they, the Mike Johnston technique, go real low and see if they come back, hit them in the gut.
Well, that's what you made me do with my house. I went in 25, you told me to go in $25,000 less than what I thought it was worth.
Yeah.
I was embarrassed to send over my offer.
I see some of this happening now. We'll move to some of the different areas. Like, what are you guys seeing in the suburbs out there?
In my neighborhood, inventory is really low still, and usually they're in Springfield Township. There's about 60 properties listed, and right now I just checked this morning. There's 32. And out of those 32, 15, like the average sale price in Springfield is probably about $425.
Okay.
There's probably 15 of them that are in Winmore that are like well over the 1.5 million area. So they're not even like included in it. So the inventory is still low out here. We also had a hurricane come through Upper Dublin and Springfield over the summer, and all those people are looking for houses now because a lot of those houses got destroyed. So inventory is still low, and things are moving pretty quickly out here.
That's interesting. Something I didn't think of.
Yeah. It's crazy how many rentals. I've been looking for a rental for a guy in Springfield for 6 months, and nothing has come up. So,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because what I'm seeing, so I'll give you an idea of where my buyer pool is right now. So I have listings in the city. I kind of have the worst of all formulas right now. I have high price listings in Center City, and I have all my buyers in the suburbs of South Jersey. So it's like, but I listed a property, Mike, in Elkins Park. It was a 2-bedroom. Did you see the property I listed out there?
No, I didn't see it.
It was on Brookside. It was a 2-bedroom. It had mold that we ended up getting remediated before it was a modern contemporary house. It was kind of cool. A 2-bedroom, it was like maybe 2,200 square feet in Elkins Park, Cheltenham School District. Taxes were pretty high. And it went under contract. Gosh, Courtney, do you remember what we sold it for? I mean, basically it was almost at asking price.
And that was after, it wasn't just mold, it was also bees and a whole other mess of problems that we went under contract for 410.
410, and they let the guy stay there for free with no lease attached to the contract for 30 days.
Well,
that's how much they wanted the house.
Yeah. Cheltenham Cheltenham Township has got to be the hardest place to sell a house, because
that's my point.
The taxes are double anywhere else. It's crazy, and you're not getting anything special in Cheltenham by having those high taxes.
No, you're not. It's funny. That's what kind of surprised me with how it went. I don't know how they're going to go on the out when they're trying to sell like 5 years down the road, because this property is so unique and specific. It's going to be kind of interesting. But what do you? So okay, I'll flip this to like Jen and Stephanie. in the Haddonfield, Haddon Township, Collingswood area. What do you, any of you guys working in Haddonfield right now?
Buyers, there's not a lot of inventory right now, right, Steph? I mean, what's your experience?
Yeah, I don't really have buyers. Well, Haddonfield, I don't have anybody that can go up to what they have. They want Haddonfield, but they can't afford it. But super competitive in Collingswood, super competitive, like, you know, Haddon Township. And there's like no inventory.
So there's no, so if you're a buyer, are you still looking at 100%, like whatever the asking price is you're just giving?
Yeah,
Oh,
or
over.
Wow. Okay.
we just wrote something in Sewell, and I think we went 5% over, even with the cash buyer.
So are these, okay, let me ask you this. Are these properties pretty much have all of the check boxes for the buyers? And then in your searches, were there properties that the buyers were like, kitchen's not updated or this, and I don't want it, and they're just sitting?
Right.
Is that what you're seeing? Because that's kind of like the concern I'm having is we say this is such a hot market, but I don't see the ugly ducklings getting picked up as fast as we should see them.
Right. People are being more picky and particular with their money, for sure.
And that's what whenever I've experienced that in the past, that's the beginning of a shift of the market.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the market's in as much demand. There's low inventory. There's a housing shortage, but the mindset of the buyer and money's cheap, like really cheap. So like, why wouldn't you as a buyer? I mean, maybe that's one of the arguments of, okay, since it's so cheap, I'm willing to go up to get the highest priced property and have everything done so I don't have to do it. So I'm almost thinking like we need rates to jump up a little bit to kind of provide more, because yes, everybody's working and hard, but if this comes to kind of like, I don't think it's going to be a crash or anything, but as it gets more challenging, you're saying all the same things I'm saying. Everybody seems like, if I have a city buyer, what's that, Steph?
I think to get a contractor, it's so expensive that people aren't considering it as much as they would before.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Prices are so high for roofs, for, you know, remodeling.
Yeah.
And you're waiting forever. So, I mean, you can't really get anybody. So you have the cost of time as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm looking at this. I'm looking at these things the same, like in that, like if I have a buyer in the city, I'm happy. Even though I absolutely just hate showing houses in the city anymore because of like the parking and everything. But I'm happy because I'm like, wow, I might actually be able to find this person some options.
Right.
But then when you go to the suburbs, it's so flipped because like 2 years ago, I used to love showing in the suburbs and the city was like more competitive. You go to the suburbs and it's like, we schedule our showings, like I just told you, and I'm checking showing time all the time to see if I even still have the showing. Right. And then we have to call the day of the showings just to double check that the agent forgot to tell us that it's under contract. Like it's just and the price point. So where are you seeing, what is a reasonable price point people can get into something in the suburbs? Because we talked Haddonfield. I had buyers in Haddonfield from 1.2 to 1.8 million. And I just got them under contract. Like it took 5 to 6 months to get these people under contract. And then I have buyers in the suburbs in Mullica Hill, Moorestown, Mount Laurel, Voorhees. So they're pretty open in Cinnaminson. And they're up to 700, I think, with taxes up to 15,000. But they want, if they're going to certain areas, they want everything. They want the finished basement, they want land, they want a pool. So very, very difficult, I think. And then sale and settlement contingent. They're also sale and settlement contingent. So like, what do you think? Are we still in that challenge of?
It's super competitive, obviously, in the most affordable market. So, I mean, first time buyer market, still super competitive. Where we're seeing the most competition of what we've been doing lately is in the threes, like between 3 and 4, obviously. And that's where we just submitted yesterday. It was like I think 325 was the offer we put forward.
Okay. And that was in Sewell?
That was in Sewell. And then I'm seeing that still, like Steph said, locally, like Collingswood, Haddon Township, that price range is like super competitive still.
Are people concerned about schools at all? Are schools a factor for people that are looking in these areas?
Yeah, I mean, people with families, of course. The woman we are working with is downsizing from a farm out in Clarksboro. So she's not really concerned with schools, more about the house and how close it is to her family. So it depends on the buyer.
And what are you seeing out there in like Burlington County, Barb, Nancy, if you guys are able to chime in? Oh, maybe not. Becky?
Barb.
Oh, Barb. Hey, Barb.
Hi, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I've definitely seen in Burlington County it's still very busy. I do a lot in Mount Laurel and Marlton, and everything I'm coming across is multiple bids still and quick turnaround. So, it's been very competitive.
So talking the premise of a market shift, is anybody seeing this market shifting?
I don't really see it. I mean, I see a little bit of a shift, but like I'm still in my market, I'm still offering $20,000 over asking and not getting the property. So it's frustrating.
Well, let me go back to the other point of, are you noticing that there's properties that are still available and they're just not as nice and people just don't want those?
No, because like in Berlin, there's 8 listings.
Wow.
Waterford, there's 16 listings. Like that's it. And it's just so, there's just such a shortage. People are just, they're, constantly outbidding.
Yeah. Wow. So are you seeing your people, so Becky, then, are any of your buyers considering different areas because of the shortages?
I have a couple of investors that are they're cash buyers. They want very specific. They want townhouses, like the 3-story townhouses in Marlton. They want townhouses and units in Berlin, and they've paid a lot over asking, just to get them. So like they're not really considering other areas because they want to invest in that area for the school system. And it's a strong rental market for the school. I do have some other buyers that have considered other areas. But again, in their price point, there's really not a lot out there, and they're offering over asking, and I mean, I attended an open house last weekend, and literally there was like 15 people in the house, 15 couples in and out of the house.
What price points are these?
I'm in like a lower price point. Like this person's in a 2 to 250 market, and then the townhouses are in like 300 range. I had one investor, cash buyer, offer $25,000 over asking, and the agent had to think about it and get back to me. Cash as is, where is, what is. I mean, like that's just how crazy it is.
And these investors are doing it for rentals?
Yeah. I have a couple of people that they want to just buy. They want to have a portfolio, and they want certain areas with certain school districts, and they're doing very well.
Yeah. So everybody still, is anybody seeing their buyers drop off? Getting discouraged?
Yes, they're getting very discouraged.
Because, when we define a market shift, we define market shifts so a couple things to keep out there as we continue to look and maybe revisit topics like this. A market shift is really when you go from 6 to 7 months inventory accumulation, which I think right now we're still at like 2 to 3 in most areas. However, some center city zip codes are getting towards that. That's why I'm saying they're moving. I would also, some ways to do to factor in your analytics when you're doing this. When you're pulling your searches, don't just rely on reports like I said. That's just an overview, but dive into these specific criteria of what your buyer pool or what your clientele is. If your clientele is 900K and up, you're going to see a whole different environment than you're going to see if your client pool is between 2 and 400K, right? So I would analyze those markets based on those metrics and that data. And then, the other thing you want to start looking at is buyers start to drop off. That's kind of a sign of like things starting to shift. Buyer confidence is really going to start going out the door. And then you're going to see more rentals. So I think it's interesting when Becky's saying her investors are going and looking at spending money that they probably, it sounds like they're not really worried about the price they're spending any right now.
No, because they're going to make it back on the rental.
So they're anticipating increased rents, which is happening across the nation. Rents are going up. So as Mike Johnson was saying, it was very difficult to find a tenant for that. So I think now the one thing we haven't had happen in this equation yet, what do you think, is what? So everything since the pandemic, we still are waiting on, is the foreclosure market. So that's where I think it's basically the magic ingredient to determine where we are with a shift. I think what I'm advising my buyers is, look, I think we're entering into a small shift. I don't think that it's going to save you a lot of money. It doesn't mean you're going to get a great property at a low price, but I think you might have some opportunities that you didn't have 3 to 6 months ago. So look at, like, Becky, you're in an area where it's just kind of sounds crazy still, 8 units up for sale. But like, if you're in some of these areas, like look at Cherry Hill, it's a big area. Cherry Hill has a decent amount of inventory out there. And so it's kind of like, is it good inventory? Is it bad inventory? And I do realize that people with real estate agents are just taking listings we all do it. And they're taking listings just to price it whatever the seller wants just to get the listing, because listings are so few and far between. And now we're having kind of the ugly ducklings listed at the price that they should be where they're renovated. And in the city, I think it's more or less like they're looking, the problem I'm having in the city with my sellers is they're reading national news. Their relatives are in these suburban communities where you're having 103%, 105% of over asking pricing. And it's like, well, wait a second. When I show you what's happening in your zip code, we're nowhere near that. We're like, we just showed you on that chart. And Capri was even saying like 3 to 6% off asking is not uncommon. So that's a 10% swing when you look at it. And what I mean is like the seller's expectation down to what the actual reality is in the city to be a 10% different. On $1 million, it's $100,000. So, you know, these are things that I think are kind of important to focus on. You know, I'm seeing areas that are open up is like Voorhees. It seems like there's opportunities in Voorhees to buy properties, whereas there's not so much in Malka Hill. Mike made a good point about the hurricane or the tornado, and you know, Malka Hill got devastated. So Winona, Malka Hill, like those are areas that are really, really suffering. So maybe they have people that are now looking that are displaced that have to find housing. I don't know. Anything else you got that anybody sees happening or experienced that could even be like solely on a listing that kind of surprised you? Like, hey, I thought I was going to sell this house, I didn't. Or I will say this, not to give away too much on my buyer in Haddonfield at that price. We ended up losing out on a house only for it to come back on the market after inspections, and we got it for almost $150,000 less than they first put in on the counter. So that to me tells me there's a shift. And why is that? Because what I believe is what usually happens is, and maybe some of you, Karen, that have experience in the commercial world, I want to know what commercial real estate and luxury real estate are usually the first two that kind of show what's going on with the economy and buyer confidence. They're usually the wiser. They're usually the more conservative when they're spending their money and not just throwing it out there. So what I found interesting was this property was on the market, came off the market, and then went back on the market. Well, guess what? When we originally competed in that price, we were only up against one other person. And that's what I'm trying to keep my feelers on for, is how many, you know, you heard of it during COVID, it was 36 offers, 48 offers. Now you're down to like, is it 10 offers, 8 offers? And Haddonfield's an interesting geographic area because it's such a small geographic area, so few homes. And I think when you have like, okay, you might be competing with the same 6 buyers all the time, but now this buyer goes and now you're competing with 5. If there's not more buyers funneling that surplus, that kind of shows that we're in a shift in my mind. What are you seeing on, Karen, if you can share, if anybody has any experience in commercial real estate, what you're seeing out there? Or if anybody has any opinions on anything.
John, I want to mention one thing.
Yes.
The other day I was just thinking, is it a mortgage forbearance still going on?
I believe I read a statistic that I think there's like 40% of the forbearances are still active from what they originally were on. Something along those lines.
So I Google it yesterday, and I think I read on website saying the current deadline for the forbearance is until next year, January 1st.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking, if there's still 40% of people not paying their mortgage for 2 years, and then what will happen after they are no longer being able, they have to start paying their mortgage, and they have to accumulate it 2 years of interest and the principal, and what will the government do? Are they going to bail out everybody who has not been paying the mortgage?
Well, no, I don't think they are, and they shouldn't, because these people have equity. No, so I'm glad you brought that up. That's a great point. Many experts believe that there's going to be a flood of listings hitting the market that are from people in the forbearance that now can't afford the mortgage, because that's a psychological effect of it's twofold. First, these people may not have jobs, some of them now, but we have a labor shortage in the country. So they don't really want to go back to work because of all the incentives and all of the, financial incentives that the government's been able to take on. Second, as Cecily said, you have all this interest compounding onto the back end. So now all of a sudden they have to pay. That interest doesn't just like wait till the end of the loan. Depending on the lender, they're restructuring that for your payments to cover back that added interest, or that added, the interest that you weren't paying is being added on, almost like a negative AM loan. So there's a lot of experts that think that there is going to be a significant amount of inventory hitting the market, because people now are going to just say, we're going to sell because we can't afford our mortgage payments, but they actually have equity in the house to make some money, which is, again, if you're connecting dots, maybe that's what Becky's investors are banking on, which is why they want to buy these properties that are like single family residential homes, where these people now are getting a job and they just have to have 6 month good job history, and now they're going to rent and slowly get back without. So the difference, I'm actually really glad Cecily brought that up, because I forgot to bring that point up. The difference between now and back in 06, 07 is, and every expert says it when you're reading about it, is first we have equity, and the mortgages that were originated are very strict still. You don't have those easy loans that you had back in 07, 05, 03, 04, 05, 06. The mortgage qualification now is still pretty strict, and the guidelines are strict. So, people had to have some equity in the property, and then you have appreciation. So now you might have listing opportunities. Now this is the evil realtor sitting there like this, reaching out to your database, like trying to kind of contact people, thinking, if you thought of selling, prices or blah, blah, blah. But if or not even talk about selling, like, hey, are you in a forbearance, and do you want to is anybody have any questions or want to talk about, what happens when the forbearance is done? Maybe I can connect you to a lender or a financial person that can actually, don't take that role on yourself, but just kind of reach out to people to see who might be wanting just to talk, because they may say, well, we were thinking of moving, and you might want to try to coach people into selling, rental, and then buying. So that gives you some sales over the next 3 years. Because I do think that Cecily's right. I think we're going to hit foreclosures, and we're going to hit the forbearances coming out that could turn into foreclosures.
I think that's like a whole nother. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying, I'm just anticipating that next year when the courts started to open and started the eviction and started foreclosed houses, and we still have tons of people not working, don't have income. Sorry, I'm outside, so I have to lower my voice. And all the forbearance. And just the past 3 months, Christine had 2 interesting listings. Both sellers filed what they call bankruptcy. So they have some kind of debt. They wipe it off. They hire bankruptcy attorney to wipe out some of the debts. And the entire household has not been working for a year or 2. But luckily, they have this house that they pay for only $250 in Circleville. But we were able to sell them for $400,000. So
Wow.
they sold the house, walked away with $150,000 cash in their pocket, and then moved down to Florida to rent a condo.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Cecily. You're bringing up, and Becky, we'll go right to you. But that's interesting because I think there is going to be some sort of an exodus out of Florida. Like, I don't think Florida can sustain. I don't think Florida has the infrastructure to sustain everyone that moved down there. I mean, where are people going to work? What are people going to do? You can only do so many Uber Eats and Uber driver positions and things like that. I mean, Florida doesn't really have like this whole high technology or medical infrastructure like some of the northeastern states do. So I'm kind of confused on. I get everybody's doing. I just saw Cecily's right. Like I and we all have these people. I just sold a property in Avalon that we're supposed to be closing, record price, and they're moving to Florida because they work from home.
I think that's what you're saying. A lot of people that are able to telecommute, and it doesn't matter where they live, so they can move to Florida or California or wherever they choose.
Yeah, and I think what it is now is like that's where I think the city is going to take even a bigger hit, is because I don't see, talking to people, anybody really wanting to move to urban areas anymore. I mean, maybe, what are they called? Like not millennials, but the generation that's after them. Maybe they start to look at it and say, well, now there's an opportunity I have to actually be able to afford to move into these areas. But I'm not seeing high net worth people really saying, I got to move into the city. Like that's an interesting thing for me, in my opinion. I'm seeing that with like homes that are upwards over 900,000, and you're just not seeing that demand, and then you see like the number 1 agent in the city that just bought a mainline office. I think he kind of knows things. So it's interesting. Not that there's like this mass exodus, but it's kind of like, if I'm an agent in the city, one of the things I would do is kind of move my tentacles out to different areas. My network's going to go there. I would kind of follow them. I'd go into the suburbs more. I'd consider things I probably didn't consider in the past, just to get more, to keep my business flow going. Same thing I told people that were, suburban and New Jersey agents prior. I would say, hey, consider working in a city because your clientele or their kids may go that direction. So consider moving into that area. Becky, you had something else you were going to say?
I was just going to say that could have been a whole nother mastermind that we could talk about, ways to come up with, connecting with these people that are going through that forbearance situation, and possibly even doing something with REOs.
Yeah, and you mentioned REOs. Has anybody been getting emails about going to classes for like to become a registered REO? I got a ton of them all the time.
Me too.
But Chase
are
Bank,
they for real, or is that just spam?
No, they want to. I mean, I deal with Chase Bank before, so their true intention is to network with you. They don't really give you REO listings. That was my experience.
Is this for them to network for for the mortgage end?
Yes.
Okay.
Got it. So they want to be like a partner of yours.
But they invite you to parties and but they don't really give you REO listings.
I mean, Cecily, maybe you're getting invites I'm not getting, and we all know I'm not a fun partier or anything, so maybe that's why. But well, I almost wonder that if there's an anticipation that these, maybe that's, Becky, another Mastermind or combined is tying in the REO work, what we're seeing in the REO work. I could get John Schwartz on this again to see what he's anticipating, because I think, yeah, I'm curious to see how many REOs are going to hit the market over the next 6 to 12 months.
I think that
Kinda
we're
like
going to see an influx.
But nobody really wants to do work on a property. So it's like, are banks going to, I guess that's the big question. Will banks, because if people are on forbearance and they list their house and they don't need the price drop, they don't have an incentive until they are forced to, based on possible foreclosure process. So will banks change the pricing spectrum a little bit by getting more, and because banks are like, all they care about is covering their note, right? For the most part.
Right.
I mean, if they can make a little money, they'll be happy, but they're not in the business of property acquisition. I will say one interesting thing that happened is, was it Zillow? I'm not sure if you guys heard in the news. Zillow halted their iBuyer program. So if Zillow is saying we don't want to be stuck with an influx of with all this inventory, then that tells me that their anticipation is that there's going to be less buyers out there. And then what did we just say? The formula of a market shift is fewer buyers, more inventory accumulation. So you take in forbearances, foreclosures, less buyers, put that into a formula. You're going to move inventory accumulation line from 30 to 60 days, people not price adjusting fast enough. And now all of a sudden you're going to have 3 months inventory accumulation, 5 months, 6, 7 months. Now we're at the shift. I think the best is a 4 to 6 month inventory accumulation. That's what I like the most as a real estate agent. But when you hit that like 5 or 6 month, so if anything, one of the parts of this meeting was to kind of see what people are seeing out there, and also to kind of give you guys some talking points with your clients, because I always find it's a lot easier for me to give people logical and rational talking points as opposed to, oh man, this is a hot market, because we get caught up in it. Like, oh, I had a buyer and I was competing over asking. Well, how many offers? Oh, there was like 5 offers. Well, what does that really mean? Does that really mean that every property is going to have 5 offers? So that's one of the reasons I thought these kind of masterminds are good, is because you're really just getting the idea of what everybody is saying out there. Anybody have anything they want to add outside of what we talked about? And I think Becky's right. Like, we could pull another mastermind out of a couple of these topics and have them. And I just think it's a good 45 minutes of everybody kind of coming together and giving their opinions, and we get to see what's out there. And if you have any ideas of how I can promote more to get more agents in the loop, I'm all ears. Do you think I have to go back and do video emails? I know everyone didn't like them, but I'm telling you, the metrics are showing that when I do a video email, we get more attendance. So maybe my charisma is a lot better than I thought. I don't know. What do you think? I know so many people missed seeing them video email. So anything else anybody want to add? I'll let you all get back to your busy weeks. All right. I'm signing off, everyone. Thanks a lot for attending. Stephanie, tell Capri I said thanks for her comments if she's somewhere back there.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.